Hey guys, Gimmickle Gamer here, bringing another Pokemon Scarlet and Violet singles moveset guide. So today we're going to be talking about Archaludon, the new evolution of Duraludon. And this is a very, very interesting Pokemon. It's very, very good, but it's funky, it's weird, it's got a lot of interesting tech and mechanics going along with it. And so, unlike a lot of other moveset guides, I think this one is definitely one that you're going to want to watch the first half of the video rather than just jump into the moveset guides here. I will still include timestamps for your convenience, so you can kind of just jump around and like decipher the information as you want here. But it's weird. We're working with a lot of things, and so let's go ahead and talk about it here. So first, taking a look at this guy, first thing I want to hit off the bat is actually talking about its stats here. So it's basically a pseudo-legendary Pokemon. It's got a 600 base stat total, and that's really, really interesting because when we compare this to like other pseudo-legendaries we've gotten in the past, this plays completely differently than anything else we've seen. It's very defensive on the physical side. That 130 defense with a respectable 90 hit points is very, very good. But then when you're looking at that special defense, it's very, very low. That's its weakest link. But then when we take a look at its typing here, we're really only weak to fighting and ground. It's a phenomenal typing defensively. And now that we got a little bit of extra stats under our belt, unlike the Duraludon just wasn't strong enough, this is very, very tanky. It's very, very respectable, and it's interesting to play with. So to the point where if we want to invest in our special defense, we can be pretty bulky. If we want to just own being a physical defense ball, we can. But then we have that massive special attack to play with too. We may want to invest in that and get the most out of it for our special hits, but we're still at a weird range, especially with all the power creep that we're really not finding one-hit KOs on a lot of Pokemon unless they're weaker. And then you also have a really, really weird move pool too that makes this Pokemon even more interesting to take a look at. Talking still about the stats though here, the other thing I really want to point out is that base 85 speed tier. It's a very, very interesting speed tier. I think in the past, when I was first getting into competitive Pokemon, I would have kind of just neglected that and gone, it's a slow Pokemon, but being 85 is actually pretty significant, especially in the Pokemon like Scarlet and Violet speed tier for the metagame. It's a good range to be in where you're faster than a lot of those base 80 speed tier Pokemon or the Pokemon that are right around 80. You have Pokemon like Chandelure, Dragonite, Milotic, Okidoki. The list just keeps going on. There's so many really, really strong, tanky Pokemon at that base 80 speed tier to where it could definitely matter if we're not running speed on this guy, and especially with having such a high special attack. I think that there's a very, very strong case to run speed on this Pokemon a lot of times, especially if we're going for a tanky set. Just kind of relying on our natural defenses, and then go with that speed and that special attack is going to be important. But it's going to be really, really weird. There's a lot of trade-offs with this guy. And it's like, if we want to invest in our special attack, then we're going to be having to sacrifice either in our speed or our defenses. If we want to sacrifice in our speed, now we're going to be getting outsped by a lot of Pokemon that we really should be able to outspeed, and that could be worse off for us, because even though we're going to be more tanky from using those EVs and more defensive stats, now we're going to be having to eat a hit that we wouldn't want to hit otherwise. So it's very, very interesting overall. There's definitely a lot of things you're going to want to tweak around, and I think it's going to be more specific to the kind of team that you're going to be running with, the kind of Pokemon that you're going to be using with this guy. Definitely adapting this Pokemon to your team is going to be the best way to run this. And I know that kind of sounds obvious, right? But I think a lot of Pokemon that are really good at just owning their niche. I think especially in the more recent gens, in Generation 7 and 8 and 9 especially, Game Freak has designed a lot of Pokemon that you look at and you go, okay, it does this purpose, right? This is the way to run this Pokemon. And Archaludon is just not really straightforward like that. I kind of relate this to a lot to Ogerpon. If you saw my Ogerpon video, Ogerpon does a lot of really unique, interesting things, and depending on the other Pokemon you run with this, it's going to find a way to be supportive. It's going to find a way to fill its niche, but it really just depends on the other Pokemon you're running with this. So my biggest goal with this moveset guide is really just trying to teach you how this Pokemon works, how the interactions are going to be, and understand all the tools that it has at its disposal so that you can find the best use of Archaludon for your teams if you want to try this Pokemon out here. Now, taking a look at the Tera Types, there's a lot of interesting Tera Types that are being run on this guy. I'm kind of the advocate that flying's the best way to go, just because it gives you a resist and an immunity to your weaknesses, your two weaknesses that you have. And that's really, really solid to have that kind of matchup here. Flying's a very popular one. Fairy's actually the one that's being run the most here, which is really, really interesting. I think that's mostly just to resist those fighting hits. I think that's going to be the most significant one, especially with like Sacred Sword being used on some Pokemon. I think if you want to be good against why can't I think of it right now? The Chain Pow. I think Tera Fairy is definitely a very respectable way to go. You have that stamina ability, which is definitely the way to go on this Pokemon as well, where you're going to be boosting your physical defense every time you take a damaging move. So you just start to get really, really physically defensive on top of that naturally high defense. So I think that in most cases, you don't even really need to invest in your physical defense at all. Hit points makes a lot of sense because you're helping like both your defenses. But you're getting boosted so much, especially by taking those physical hits, by going up against physical threats, that with the stamina, you're going to be boosting a lot here. Now, as far as items go, I think that you have a lot of options, again, depending on what kind of teams you're going to be running here. The Assault Vest is really, really solid option, and I really like it on this guy. But you have to be very careful because there's going to be trade-offs with the kind of coverage moves you're going to be running and the kind of support you have. I think Assault Vest is going to be really good if you're running this guy with range support to take advantage of one of your new signature moves, which we'll talk about in a second here. It can be good just to round out those defenses too, so that you can kind of just go for the max speed, max special attack, go for a more offensive build, and then still have some of that natural bulk on your biggest weakness, which is your special defense, right? So I definitely like the Assault Vest here. Leftovers is another really good option just because you are so tanky and you're going to get more and more tanky against those physical threats with your stamina ability. So just kind of having that sustain there without having a really good sustain option outside of rest. I think Leftovers is going to be really good. Moringa Berry there is also there just to kind of make up for that biggest weakness being your special defense. Citrus Berry is going to give you a little bit more longevity, and I think that synergizes really well with the stamina ability too, to where especially if you're against a physical threat here and you take a super effective move, now you're going to get that health back, and because you're going to be boosting your really, really high physical defense, you're going to be able to deal with that Pokemon much better, and it might just give you a little bit more longevity than something that's going to be more of like a long-term type of sustain item like the Leftovers, right? Custap Berry is a really interesting item on this guy because while you are going to be outspeeding a lot of big Pokemon, you're still slower than a lot of the sweepers, right? Base 85 speed tier is nothing that's like going to run home and just sweep a bunch of Pokemon just on the pure merit of your speed alone. So I think that with your really high special attack stat and with your ability to boost your stats further, that could be a really good option to, you just rely on those naturally tanky stats. You get down to a low hit point range, and then they come in with a sweeper. They think they're going to outspeed you, and you catch them off guard with the Custap Berry, get that priority on them, and then just find a KO where you otherwise wouldn't. It's nice to see that it's actually getting a lot of usage right now. I think it's at around like 10% usage, and I think that's definitely a respectable item to run on this Pokemon, so don't sleep on it. I don't have it on any one of the moveset guides, but it's definitely a very, very good item on this Pokemon. And then Rocky Helmet too just makes a lot of sense. You're an awesome physical wall, especially if you wanted to go max hit points, max defense with that stamina ability and just really, really make the physical Pokemon just hate their life. The Rocky Helmet's the way to go, just to kind of punish them for every time they're doing damage to you. You're going to be boosting your defense and they're going to be taking damage. So you can kind of play around that here. As far as viable moves go, you have tons and tons of moves, and I didn't even put all of them here. I mostly just focus on your special moves because you're more of a special threat, but because you have that 600 base stat total, it's important to not just neglect your physical attack because there definitely is something there. I think that a lot of people could get caught off guard by going for a physical option here. And you do get access to the Sword Stance too, so that's going to be really nice. You don't have as good of a boosting option for your special attack outside of your signature move, which we'll talk about in a minute here. But you can lower their special defense with Metal Sound if that's the way you want to go. And then as far as sustain goes, you really only have rest. You could use Iron Defense to boost your defense further, but I don't really think you need it with the stamina ability. I think it's just kind of wasting a move slot when you can use it for something better. Thunder Wave is going to be really nice on this guy too, because you are tanky, because you can take a hit and you have a good speed range. That's going to allow you to go like a set more like max hit points, max special attacks. So you're still having a lot of high damage output. You're still going to be a little bit more defensive, but then you have the ability to not only give yourself speed, but then give yourself a little bit of status to play around too, to make your opponent a little bit more frustrated with dealing with you, right? So I also like the Electroshot and the Meteor Beam. These moves are basically the same thing, only Electroshot has 100% accuracy. It's an electric type move that's a charging move. So the first turn you're going to boost your special attack. Second turn you're going to do your damage, kind of like Solar Beam and Meteor Beam. But in Rain, it's a one-turn charge, so it works like a normal move. You're going to boost your special attack and do the damage in the same turn. So I think that in Rain, this Pokemon is absolutely insane with that Electroshot. The biggest thing though with the Electroshot is just if you're running Rain support, which is very, very common with this Pokemon, it's going to be really predictable that they're going to want to go for the Electroshot, right? So you not only have to now allow for a Pokemon to provide you that support with the Rain support, then it's going to be predictable and Pokemon can switch in with you with immunities and kind of play around that. So you got to be really careful with that. It's also going to be hard because you don't have good sustain on this guy outside of the rest. That's really going to be your way of boosting your special attack, and you don't want to like waste too much time just trying to boost your special attack to a good range, to the point where now you're actually in a good spot with your special attack. You can start sweeping, but you're too low on your hit points, and you're going to get taken out by most other Pokemon, especially when you're a little bit slower than a lot of the sweepers, right? So it's a good move, but it's a little bit predictable, and I do like looking at some of the other options outside of that here. As far as other special options, you have your good stab coverage options, Flash Cannon for more reliable damage, Steel Beam if you just want someone with really, really high base damage and you're not worried about doing your own health, or if you just want to maintain the momentum of the battle too by taking yourself out, while also nuking the opponent. And not allowing them to set up on you, which I think is going to be really good here. Dragon Pulse for more reliable damage again, Draco Meteor for the big damage, with that little bit of repercussion of the special attack drop, right? Aura Sphere and Dark Pulse are there for just coverage options. Thunderbolt could be another good coverage option if you're not running this with Rain, and just want that electric coverage. Follow Play is kind of cool on it, especially since you're going to be so good against a lot of physical attackers. Getting to abuse them with their own attack is going to be cool. Metal Burst is an awesome option, especially if you're running like Assault Vest on this guy. You're going to have that effective bulk, but be able to soak a hit and then just dish it back out to them, and still be able to play from there, right? And then Body Press is going to be one of your main moves. A ton of people running Body Press on this because you're going to be able to take a physical hit, even if it's super effective with that high defense, and then turn that around and just abuse them with it with that stamina ability, right? You're going to do so much damage. So as far as Pokemon that this is strong against and counters for this is where this Pokemon gets really, really weird, because I don't think there's necessarily like specific Pokemon you're going to be running out Archaludon to beat. And I don't think there's necessarily one great counter for this either, because it's kind of all over the place. It's just a really, really good 1-for-1 plus mon, where you have a really good reliable typing, you have good reliable stats, you have good reliable move pool, and you're going to have good matchups fairly against a lot of Pokemon. It's just going to be a frustrating Pokemon to deal with, like for any team. And especially in a 3v3 battle stadium kind of setting there, that's going to be really strong for you, right? You're going to be able to play around that and just deal with a lot of other Pokemon, and handle those threats really, really well. It's just going to be kind of annoying for your opponent to deal with, because if you're able to take care of that like one strong Pokemon on their team, that's going to threaten the rest of your team, and they don't have a good matchup to take out the Archaludon, now you're in a really good position, if that kind of makes sense, right? So it does do pretty good against the Ogerpon there, especially when you consider its Pokemon's going to be run with Rain support. That's going to lower the Fire type damage for the Hearthflame Mask Ogerpon. But against the other typings, it does pretty good too, and you're just going to be getting more and more defensive, and you're able to kind of whittle this guy down. So it's really nice to have another Pokemon that's going to be able to handle the Ogerpon really well. This Pokemon's been such a huge threat ever since the addition of the Teal Mask DLC, right? So having a Pokemon that can deal with that's going to be really nice. I have King Gambit in asterisks here, just because even though you handle King Gambit really well, especially with that body press, and a lot of times King Gambits will like go for like Terra Flying if they want to Terrasilize out of it, and then you can deal with it with the Electroshot. You got to be careful with King Gambit too, because King Gambit likes to run the Assault Vest. It's going to be very specially defensive a lot of times, and it can just go for Guillotine if it's running the Guillotine, and not actually proc that stamina, and then just kind of go for those 1-hit KO moves and take you out that way. Baxcalibur, it's good against, even though Baxcalibur really likes to run the Earthquake, likes to go Terra Ground a lot of times. I think you're defensive enough that you're going to get those stamina boosts and you're going to be able to deal with it pretty well, especially with that Tera Type. Depending on what Tera Type you go with, you're going to be able to deal with Baxcalibur a little bit better. I think that's another argument too to run Tera Fairy too, if you're really worried about that. That's one of the Pokemon that threatens your team really well. And then just handling Glimora really, really well here, because you're not going to get poisoned with that base typing. Glimora doesn't really have a good move to deal with you. Yes, the Earth Power is going to do a lot of damage. You have to be kind of careful of that. But outside of that, like, you're going to be able to take it out with your special Steel type options and not really proc its ability. So that's going to be kind of nice too. As far as counters go, I have Tainlu and Hippowdon here just again for the ability to kind of switch in on the Electroshock and not really care about that, and then also go for those 1-hit KO moves, because then you're not proccing that stamina ability. But if you're going up against a Terra Flying Archaludon, now your one option to deal with this guy goes out the window, right? But the other thing about Hippowdon and Tainlu is a lot of times they like to run Stealth Rocks, they like to run Whirlwind. And that can be kind of good too, to where if they go Terra Flying on you and you can't deal with them with the Fissure, at least you can throw those hazards down and then swap them out. And so the next time they're switching back in, they're going to be lower on health, and then hopefully one of your special threats can take care of it from there. So they're going to be a better option a lot of times, but it's still not perfect, right? The Terra Flying really kind of shuts those guys down fairly well. And they're not going to be going that one-on-one matchup. And I have Fluttermane here. Interestingly enough, just because I think that Calm Mind Pokemon in general are going to be able to set up on this guy and handle it really, really well. Since he wants to go for those special moves a lot of times, because that high special attack stat, if you can get the outspeed on him, if you can get the Calm Mind and boost your special defense first, you can be able to deal with it really well. And then Fluttermane doesn't really care about the body presses right off the bat, right? It could once you terrestrialize, and I like Terra Electric on Fluttermane, that's why I put it here. So you can hopefully soak in like a Steel type hit, boost up to the point where their special attack isn't going to like really threaten you, and take it out with its low special defense before it has a chance to like kind of revenge kill you with the body press. But even Fluttermane struggles a little bit here, because special moves are going to proc that stamina ability too. It's still going to boost its defense. So, I mean, there's just really not one specific Pokemon that can handle Archaludon really well. Specs Chi-Yu here can one-hit KO this Pokemon fairly easily, even just with like a flamethrower or something like that. But because it likes the rain support so much, and that's going to be reducing the power of fire type moves, it's not a good reliable way to take care of the Archaludon either, right? So with that said, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Let's go and talk about some movesets and some like different applications of kind of the tools it has going on here, to hopefully allow you to have some success when using this Pokemon. Alrighty. And again, just a quick reminder that these are not like movesets that I recommend that you just like follow verbatim and just copy and paste this into your game and then you're going to be golden, right? They're going to do all right, but really think about the application and how it's going to affect your team. There's going to be a lot of variability, and we're going to talk about that here. So the first thing I want to talk about is just rain support Archaludon. That's really, really common, and a lot of times you're going to see Pelipper, right? Just because it can U-turn. And any kind of Pelipper set's fine. I kind of like having the Tailwind on it, just because then you can give that Archaludon like a turn or two of speed. But the Tailwind peters out pretty fast. So you can go Tailwind, U-turn, and that's really only going to have 2 turns to play around with that extra speed. That can be enough, because that kind of combos really well with the Electroshot here. So I think that's a pretty good option, but you just got to be really, really careful about that, right? And also just like going like slow speed with the Pelipper, just so you can soak a hit, and then swap out into the Archaludon too, if you don't have the opportunity to set the Tailwind for your Archaludon, right? Now I prefer the Assault Vest a lot of times if I'm going to do rain support, just because then I'm getting that effective bulk on the special side that I wouldn't otherwise have. If I'm swapping into against a physical hit, then that's still going to proc my stamina. I'm going to get stronger and stronger. I already have that really nice natural bulk. And then I just have a really good special attack stat naturally. So if I go Timid here, now I'm going to be really fast against those Pokemon we were talking about it again at that like base 80 speed tier. We're not going to be worried about getting outsped by a Pokemon that we really should be able to beat. But then we're going to have that extra support too from the Tailwind if we need it, and just have that high damage output. The next move then we want to do is going for that Electro Shot right away, boosting our special attack, and we just kind of play around with our coverage from there. Now, I think Draco Meteor is better in this case a lot of times, because even though you're going to be low on your special attack, you don't have good sustain options, and it's better just to go for the damage than to not have anything at all, right? Be careful if they have a ground type in the back if you're leading with this kind of thing. Maybe be mindful of that. Maybe try to play around whatever that switching is going to be. It may be safer just to go for the Flash Cannon that first turn just to get some chip and play from there too. So I think that's kind of predictable. It's very, very good. I've lost to this definitely before. There's other options you can do too, obviously. You could run this bulkier if you want, but I just think that if you're running range support, running with the speed and the max special attack and then the assault vest to get that effective bulk and the special defense is definitely the way to go here. Now, Moringa Berry. I really, really like Moringa Berry on this Pokemon. And if we're running Moringa Berry, I like the idea of just going max special defense wall with a little bit of speed creep, just to kind of outspeed other Archaludon that are going bulky, or other base 80 speed tier Pokemon that are going bulky with some speed creep or whatever. You see that a lot with like Dragonite. Because you're going to get more and more defense with the stamina ability as time goes on, but you don't have the opportunity to really boost your defense anymore. And I really like the Electroshock on here too, because with that body press and the Electroshock, that not ground, fighting and electric type coverage, you're going to be able to hit most Pokemon pretty well. And the Electroshock is just going to allow you to slowly boost that special attack and be more and more threatening as the battle goes along. And that body press is just going to progressively get stronger and stronger against a physical threat. So you can just kind of stay healthy. I think that this can definitely get beaten and abused pretty easily, right? And there's also a lot of anti-setup going around. There's a lot of Encore on the metagame, a lot of taunts, things like that. That's going to shut this down pretty easily here. But if you want just like a nice, like bulky, mixed defensive wall that can kind of deal with both sides of the spectrum, this is a good way to go here, and it's going to catch a lot of people off guard. I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to handle those special threats as well as it does. And the nice thing is, with those special hits, you're going to be taking them well with the Moringa Berry. You can still heal up, but then you're going to be able to hit them with a really, really powerful body press too, and just hit them with a lot of damage. Now, Power Herb is not my favorite item on this Pokemon. You do have the option to do Meteor Beam too if you wanted that as like a coverage option. So you go Meteor Beam or Electro Shot, but I think that the body press and just relying on the Electro Shot is the way to go here. Again, I'm going to go timid here, just relying on my natural bulk for the sweepers that are going to be faster than me, but being able to outspeed those Pokemon that are going to be very, very close in speed tier, but just a little bit slower than me, right? And then you just have that really nice damage output to where if you can get an Electric Shot off, now you're going to find a lot of 1-hit KOs with that base 125 special attack stat, just with those really high damaging moves. And then the body press here is just to deal with like special defense walls. You're going to get boosted really, really well, and this is going to do a lot of damage just because your defense is so naturally high, and with it getting boosted with the stamina as well. So this is kind of like my favorite Power Herb set to run with this guy. That's kind of the route you want to go with this. Salic Berry is kind of an interesting option here. I was just trying to think of something that would be good with like the physical option. And if you're going to be boosting with Swords Dance, you're going to want a little bit more speed, right? Now I did go Jolly on this, max attack, max speed here. You have a couple options, right? I did the hard press just for like a good stab option, but you could get rid of this and you could do like substitute to bring yourself down to proc that Salic Berry if you wanted. You have the Endure. If you really just want a more reliable option to proc that Salic Berry. But I think that you're tanky enough a lot of times that you're gonna get down to the point where you're gonna proc that Salic Berry. And if you can get that Swords Dance up and then proc the Salic Berry, you're gonna be able to reverse sweep with this Pokemon super, super well, and just catch a lot of people off guard. I don't think they're gonna be expecting Archaludon to go physical. And this is kind of like a fun set. It's gonna be very niche and it's a little bit harder to pull off. But I think that Archaludon can actually do this pretty well, and you're going to catch a lot of people off guard with that still very reasonable physical attack here. And then the last set I have here is just like a pure physical wall. You're seeing a few people run Stealth Rocks on this Pokemon. I do like that it gets the Thunder Wave too, and so just kind of owning that you're a physical wall here, dealing with those Pokemon. You can get some status down on their team, and just force some switches, get some chip damage, and then also do a lot of decent damage with that body press. That's just kind of going to snowball against those physical threats. It's going to be a good way to run this guy. I think this is going to be a little bit stronger too, especially if you can get like Light Screen up as support on this Pokemon. I think Archaludon in general just does really well with screen support just because it is kind of tanky. and just kind of doesn't have a good sustain option. But yeah, there's definitely a lot more ways than just what I highlighted here to run this Pokemon. So definitely take a look at this Pokemon. It's just so good at dealing with so many different Pokemon. It's just kind of annoying Pokemon to deal with too, with not many direct counters, right? So it's going to be really, really fun to use. I really hope this helps. Have fun using Archaludon on the ranked ladder, and this is Chemical Gamer out.